Right.
And there just isn't any provision for them to be able to get stuff done. So we need urgent action. And the problem we seem to be facing is we don't actually have a government that's at all interested in this at the moment. They're interested in other things.
What are they? What actually? This isn't a zinger or a gotcha. What are they interested in? Do you know? Or is just using that as a throwaway line?
I don't know. I mean, actually, it's very difficult to find out what they seem to think they should be doing.
There's a whole
range of issues.
A lot of them are writing articles for newspapers about why you should support Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, and I'm a junior minister no one's ever heard of, and the Daily Telegraph have asked me to write 500 words about how I'm going to vote or who I want to be led. But what are they actually interested in? He's shopping. He's in Greece, filling up his baskets with feta cheese and I don't know, tzatziki. What are they doing? What are they all doing?
It's a great question, James.
Basically
what we need, we need them to come out of being a zombie government and actually take some action. The amazing thing is they're talking about what they might do once they have a new leader. These new bills are coming in on August the 26th. I'm dealing with people who are considering whether they should give up their business now, not in a month
before it comes. Because because you're seeing the tsunami is heading towards the beach, isn't it? So you run.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't seem to be able to get any engagement from government. I mean, we had all the representative agencies like ours got together on Friday and issued a letter to Kwasi Kwarteng and over to Nadeem Sahawi at the Treasury and just said, what are you doing? And there's no reply. There's nothing.
Well, we'll see what happens in September, but for some of your clients, of course, by then it could be too late. I did, and I can't help it, because my inner schoolboy is always quite near the top of near the surface mark. I did have a very rubbish joke in reaction to your opening comments, which was this: can't they all go acoustic?
Well, they could if they did it in the dark as well, I suppose, James. But
of course, it is. Of course,
short of electricity coming from other planets. I think we have to accept that live music is one of those things we might want to keep, and we might want to find a way to get electricity to them that doesn't shut them down.
Yeah, and I see that you've written. Someone's tweeted me that you've written to, as you just mentioned, to Kwasi Kwarteng, and I'll retweet that now so that people can see precisely that bill that you describe. Thank you, mate. And again, I wish there was more that I could do. I did get one message yesterday after we talked about hospitality saying it's not all bad news. It was from my friend Natasha, who's on the line now. I hope she doesn't mind me telling you. Natasha's dad was one of the absolute dons of British cuisine, and he's become a friend of mine over the years, Nico Ladinis. But it was good news in the area. Two things, actually, Natasha, I want to talk to you about. The first is why in this country, and your dad's very cosmopolitan, drawing on influences when he ran his restaurants from all over the world. Why do we not treat the hospitality sector more respectfully, and what can be done about it?
Morning, James, and thank you for those kind words about my father. Who the hell knows? It is such a fantastic industry. I think one of the main problems is that we have absolutely no help from the government, so it's all left to private individuals, sponsors, restaurants and hotels just to get on with it. On the continent, as you quite rightly say, in places like France and Italy, it's woven into the fabric of the culture, and it has status and prestige and recognition. I mean, it's completely usual for chefs or restaurateurs or hoteliers to get a Légion d'honneur, for instance, in France. And when was the last time that a chef or a hotelier or a restaurateur, anyone like that, got knighted in this country?
That's a really good point. I'd never thought of that, actually.
I mean, hospitality is the third largest employer in this country, which is something that people never think of either.
And I know you were listening yesterday, the number of establishments facing existential crisis as a consequence of staff shortages being just one element of it, but energy bills on the horizon and all sorts of problems as well. Tell me a little bit about the Royal College of Culinary Arts and the sort of attempts to imbue the industry with the sort of respect that it enjoys almost everywhere else in Europe. In fact, everywhere else in Europe, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. So the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts and other groups like the Gold Service Scholarship run competitions to encourage youngsters into the catering industry because it is a skilled profession. And we're reliant on private donations and volunteers like my husband and his colleagues who actually want to give back to our industry. They've been working in it for many, many years. Serge has been in the industry for who won't thank me for telling them this for 60-odd years. And it's an industry that's given them so much, and they want to give back and encourage youngsters and help them up the ladder into a fabulous profession.
And how easy is it to attract British youngsters into that sort of side of things, the faster track?
It gets a little bit easier every year.
Good.
At the moment, we're running at about 25% of candidates who get to semi-final and final stage are British kids, which is wonderful. And the patron of the Gold Service Scholarship, we're lucky enough to have Her Majesty the Queen as our patron, and the patron of the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts is the Prince of Wales. So those are two people who entirely understand the value of training, reward, service, and a profession and skill.
How can people listening to this find out a little bit more, Natasha?
They're both online. The Gold Service Scholarship launches on the 5th of September, and that's a competition which is aimed at kids between the ages of 22 and 28. And there's a competition of just under that age group and a competition just over that age group. So either go to the Gold Service Scholarship or the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts. Not the Royal College, as I misspoke earlier. The Royal Academy of Culinary
Nobody's
Arts.
Perfect. Give my love to your mum and dad, won't you?
Absolutely, totally. Zulba is all the better for hearing your dulcet tones every morning.
He's a legend, as you well know. The first, I think, British chef to get 3 Michelin stars, and one of the many people, well, not that many, but one of the people that I've been lucky enough to become friends with as a consequence of presenting this programme. Natasha, thank you. It's coming up to 12 noon. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where it's a bit of an odd one next, right? And it's last time I did this, the whole world went bonkers. It's a deliberately light-hearted approach at what might be quite a serious issue. It's about loneliness and men, and it's about some psychological research showing that growing numbers of men are lonely because their relationship skills are not good enough to impress increasingly selective women. Now, we'll read into it a little further at the top of the next hour, but it suggests two things to me. Number one is men really need to sort themselves out, and I'll tell you number two after this. 3 minutes after 12 is the time, and we move into much shallower waters now, and waters that I know very, very little about. Couples expert Dr. Greg Matos has caused a bit of a rumpus, triggered a backlash in fluent journalese, from many males after suggesting that they are struggling to meet the high standards of modern females. It's in Psychology Today, this article. It's a piece called The Rise of Lonely Single Men. And it talks about the fact that women aged between 25 and 45 prefer men who are emotionally available, or woke, as I think you might call it, good communicators, and share similar values. He has been accused of peddling cliches about men. There's a curious section of society who, I said I can't suddenly claim to be an expert, having said that I don't know anything about it. But some of the criticism he's receiving is from men who insist that all women really want is tall, athletic, and financially successful men. So a couple of things occurred to me reading some of this. This idea that some men resist the idea that women prefer emotionally available, good communicators is quite heartbreaking. It's quite tragic because you're sitting there all lonely and you're certain that the reason why you can't get a girlfriend is because you're not tall and rich. Whereas actually, if you put a little bit more effort into self-care, and I don't mean tidying your bedroom or trimming your nose hair, although the second one would certainly be a good thing to do. I mean, in working on your emotions and being healthy. Do you see what I mean about it being heartbreaking? Because it's such a vicious circle. You're frustrated and bitter because you're lonely, but you're lonely because you're frustrated and bitter. And you can never make yourself taller or better looking. And it's highly hard, particularly in the current climate, to make yourself rich, not richer, not better off, but to actually go from being not rich to rich. How are you going to do that? This is why things like Bitcoin and online scams are so popular with the same sort of men. And, I wrote about this in my first book. It's not new. I wrote about the incel sort of movement, men who describe themselves as involuntarily celibate, and they hate women. I don't know how much of this crosses over. I'm going to ask you in a minute. But that seems to be the tension at the heart of this. It seems to be the case that men who are not emotionally available, men who will often be bitter and angry, are in a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. They're in an eternal loop of anger. You can't start liking women. I can give you some advice on this, actually. Come here, sit down, pull up a chair. You can't start liking women, and a large part of the reason why you're so angry and bitter is that deep down you don't like women, right, lads? And the reason you don't like women, very simply, is because, and this is, I suppose, truer the younger you are, it's all about the S word, isn't it? It's all about sex. And the fact that you're not getting any sex, which is incredibly frustrating and infuriating and enraging when you're young, you blame it all on them for not giving it to you. Which is why particularly unpleasant misogynistic men enjoy hero status on the internet quite often and elsewhere. So here's the thing. You can't start liking women until you like yourself. And you can't start liking yourself until you're comfortable with who you are and with your emotions and with your, if you like, your emotional availability. Now, most people don't need therapy necessarily, but working out what you're angry about, working out what you're cross about is so powerful. It really is. That's what most therapy is working out the roots of the things that are poisoning you, working out the roots of the toxicity in your life. And it's always inside. It's always something that's happened to you. It's never going to be something outside, something you have no control over. Where does your power lie? God, I thought this was going to be a lot more lighthearted. I'll lighten things up in a couple of minutes. But the question of where does your power lie is the most important question you can ever ask yourself. So whatever situation you're in and however frustrating it is, where does your power lie is a way of asking yourself, well, what can I actually do? What do I have control over? What do I have power over? And then you can start making changes. So you can't suddenly make yourself rich, regardless of what some Herbert on the internet is going to tell you. You can't suddenly make yourself taller if you really think that's what women are looking for. You can't suddenly make yourself, I suppose you could lose weight a bit, but, you know, there's someone out there who'd love you exactly the way you are, but you're never going to find her until you like yourself. The more furious and angry you are on the internet or logging on to these things, the worse it's going to be. And, you know, the messages I get from men talking about, here's one from Grant. You're bitter and lonely because you're bitter and lonely. You're the world's worst shrink. Angry women don't even exist, eh? What is there about women to like? Mate, that's nothing to do with women and it's everything to do with you. It's bizarre. But I don't imagine you're going to ring me. So we're going to do it from the other way around. Because if this is true, men are left lonely as they fail to meet women's high standards. For the record, I don't think these standards sound particularly high as it goes. Being you know, emotionally literate and able to talk about your feelings doesn't sound to me like an unreasonable ambition for the average woman to have. But if it's true and men are being left lonely, then that also means that more and more women are choosing to be single rather than to settle down with one of the men who are now lonely. Are you still with me at the back? Yeah, this is clever, this is. So if there are more and more lonely men, anyone just hear the words of Eleanor Rigby playing out in the background there ever so slightly? No, just me. So if there are more and more lonely men, then that must mean there are more and more women choosing to be single who aren't actually lonely. They're comfortable with their decisions because they'd rather be single than with an emotionally illiterate or an emotionally unavailable man. Is this true? 03456060973. And then looking at the age range 25 to 45 and pretty much talking more to women about men than talking to men about their own pain. Although if I am describing you and it's coming as a bit of a shock to realise that I am, then by all means ring in. Or if you don't like the way that I haven't described you. I have described the people I'm describing accurately. If you don't think I'm describing you, you're not allowed to get cross because it's not you that I'm describing. If you don't like my reasons for explaining why you're lonely, then tell me what the real reasons are. 03456060973. But what's it like to date in this world? That's what I want to know. From women, really. or indeed from men who don't think it's their fault that they're lonely. They do think it's somehow the fault of external factors. So 25 to 45, the research suggests that what you're looking for is or are emotionally available good communicators with whom you share similar values. A certain type of man resists this idea and is adamant that what women are really looking for is tall, athletic and financially successful men. My theory, and I suspect probably the point of this article, is that gives them an excuse for being on their own, an excuse for being lonely, which is damaging to everybody involved. I don't know how you break the spell. If I did, I'd write another book and sell millions of copies and become a guru. But actually, I couldn't imagine anything worse. But the question of what it's actually like on the ground or in the game is one that I could sit here for an hour and blather and never get close to knowing because I haven't got a clue. And I don't think, touch wood, unless Mrs. O'Brien comes to her senses sometime soon, I don't think I ever will be in the dating game again. I can't begin to imagine what it's like. So let me give you some more of the detail. The study analysed the frequency of loneliness reported by more than 46,000 people aged 16 to 99. Men were more likely to be lonely than women. The article identifies 3 issues for heterosexual men, including that around 2/3 of online dating app users are men. So the conversation is probably going to be chiefly about dating apps. So there's an awful lot of competition on there. There's way more men than women on these apps. And the third thing is men's skills deficits in relation to relationships. It means you get fewer dating opportunities and longer periods of being single because you are not giving emotional connection. You're not giving good emotional availability. And that is the lifeblood, this expert says, of healthy long-term love. There's a bit of analysis at the end of the Daily Mail's article, which I think is bogus. British dating experts said, men struggle slightly these days as they don't know if holding a door open or offering to pay for dinner will upset a woman, but they can still be a gentleman and should do so. I don't know that counts as being a dating expert. If just ask. It's not difficult. Most people quite like having dinner paid for, I think. But equally, I presume it's a bit irritating if someone expects you to pay for dinner, especially if you're both earning, you're both working. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you can do any of the 3 things that I've just asked for. Number 1, why are so many men lonely if it's not because of their own emotional unavailability? Maybe talk to me about your son. Number 2, does this mean that more and more women are choosing to be on their own rather than settling down with an inadequate man, an emotionally unavailable man? And number 3, what's it actually like out there? How would you explain to me, as someone who knows nothing about any of this, what this means? So you're on an app, you quite like the look of someone, you start exchanging, you may even meet up. What does emotionally unavailable actually mean? Because if we can pin it down, then we might help some of the men who are feeling very lonely understand why they're so lonely. What are the signs? What would lead you to conclude, I don't want to see this fella again because he is emotionally unavailable? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And on some subjects, I feign ignorance. Or no, I don't feign it. I exaggerate my ignorance. I embellish my ignorance in order to encourage you to ring in. On some subjects, I possibly have the opposite problem, where I come across as a bit of a know-it-all. This, I'm delighted to tell you, is a subject where I, like Manuel in Fawlty Towers, which reminds me, John Cleese is coming up on Full Disclosure next week, touch wood, so there's something for you to get excited about. I know nothing. Literally nothing about this, except the theories I've just shared with you on why being bitter and angry as a man makes you lonely, and being lonely makes you bitter and angry, and being bitter and angry makes you lonely, and being lonely makes you bitter and angry, and being bitter and angry makes you lonely. It's 12:15. 17 minutes after 12 is the time. Men are left lonely as they fail to meet women's high standards. Translate that into comprehensible English for a 50-year-old man who hasn't dated in 22 or 23 years. The researcher, the psychologist behind the research states women prefer men who are emotionally available, good communicators, and share similar values. Tasha is in Harlow. Tasha, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. I'm so pleased you're having this discussion. I've literally just started having this discussion on Instagram. I've got a thing called That Politics Teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And really interesting. So I am 31. I've come off the dating apps and I just cannot bother to talk to a lot of the men. I will say not all, before I get a lot of hate.
Yes, of course.
But I'm a teacher, and I'll get messages such as, "Oh, I wish you were my teacher when I was at school, and can you give me detention?" So I'll say to them, all I'm hearing is, you want me to be a paedophile, essentially, because that's what the case would be. Then they kick off.
That's quite, I mean, yeah, okay, I get it.
That's all
You
it
just
is.
took me slightly by surprise there. I didn't think we were going to go in quite so fast.
Yeah, then also they'll say things, the women's football's been on recently. I used to play football. Prove it to me.
Yeah.
I have to prove to you that I play football. So first of all, I'm thinking, well, you're a man, I'm a woman, I play football. I haven't asked you to prove that you play for your...
Well, let me just try and pin it down. They're treating it like... I think banter is an awful word, isn't it? But they're
terrible word, James.
But it is. But that's what they're doing. They're not offering you any form of emotional engagement. It sounds quite aggressive. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and things they think that are funny. You just think this is just another day of like classic sexism, and if you do call them out on it, then are you one of those feminists?
Right.
Oh, okay, so that's a bad thing, is it then? And then instantly I'm thinking, well, then you're one of those men who, if you're not a feminist, I think you're sexist, because feminism just wants equality. And if you don't want that, then that's not something I'm going to engage with. And they make it like it's a bad thing.
How long has it taken you to arrive at this conclusion? I suppose in old-fashioned language, I'd say, how many frogs have you kissed, as it were?
Oh, James, I don't even want to start counting that. That'll make me more depressed.
I don't need a number. I'm looking more for a sort of chronology.
I suppose I probably realised this in my mid-20s, and I sort of, now because I'm 30, I'm thinking, I just really don't care, I'm just not putting up with it. I'm quite happy how I am. So I'm not on my own as if it's a bad thing. It's just, I don't want to be with these people if that's...
So that was what I was wondering, whether or not the rise in lonely men, it means an increase in the number of women who would like to be in a relationship, but not enough. I tell you what, someone's put it quite brilliantly. Let me see if I can find it. The idea that you don't want... This is lovely. I don't believe, says Linda, that women are happy being single. I think they can be lonely too, but they prefer not to settle down and be lonely within a relationship.
That's exactly it. You also get things as well. If they say to you, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm out with my friends." "Oh, if you were my girl, I wouldn't let you be out of your friends. People are going to start talking to you." Then I think, well, now you're going to try and control me if I was with you.
There's a growth in this kind of attitude, isn't there? There does seem to be a sort of increase in that idea of women as... I mean, the trad wife movement in America kind of plays up the idea that we should be returning to a sort of 1950s model and uglier as well, because it almost comes across as ownership. Men who
I
think
had the Andrew Tate conversation with Natasha Devon on the weekend, and she was saying that a lot more men are having these views. He has over 11 billion views on his social media.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous.
I think I read about this fella the other day. I think he used to knock about with little Tommy 10 names. It's not his own social media. It's other people setting up accounts, sort of propagating and promulgating the weird attitude to women that some men purvey. I don't know whether they live like that. They probably do. But it's all about hatred and anger. And hatred and anger means you want to own and you want to control. The problem is, of course, that if you're sitting in your bedroom in Birmingham and you're looking up to people who really wouldn't wee on you if you were on fire, you're in that perfect circle again. You're in that lonely and bitter and angry, therefore I'm lonely. I'm lonely because I'm bitter and angry. I'm bitter and angry because I'm lonely. I'm lonely because I'm bitter and angry. I wish you were. I mean, it's so hard not to patronise people, Tasha, because you, especially from the perspective of a smug married. But yeah, I get that. I'd rather be lonely, a bit lonely on my own, than lonely in a relationship. Cameron's in Cardiff. Cameron, what would you like to say?
All right, mate. It was just about, like Andrew Tate, like the person said before, there's been a real explosion of these. Do you know the term red pill?
I think vaguely from... go on, tell me.
So it comes obviously from the Matrix, the blue pill to stay asleep, the red pill to wake up.
Yes.
And the idea is that...
I thought that was more about the government's trying to control my life, or they're trying to cancel cash.
It's both.
Is it? So what does being red-pilled in the context of dating involve? It's
about... And I don't subscribe to any of this.
No, fine. I mean, you can be my tour guide.
But it's about the idea that, men have to wake up and take control, and that, they have to understand that women are things to be gamed and played, and there's rules, and you have to You have to make yourself into, they call it a high-value male.
But how lonely do you have to be before you realise that's not working?
I don't know. I think the attitude is that if it's not working, you haven't done it right. You haven't tried hard enough.
Okay.
Or the woman is not, she's not worth your time, or she's not smart enough to understand that you're a high-value male. And there's no out. There's no way that you could be wrong. It's just not worked right.
What is a high-value male? How would they define? Because the research suggests that a high-value male is someone who's emotionally available, good at communicating, and possessed of similar values. What is a high-value male from the red-pilled side of the conversation?
If you treat a woman like another person, everything you said is true. But if you treat them like an asset to be obtained, you need
with sex as the commodity, as it were.
Sex is that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Women hold the keys to sex. They can turn that tap on and off. So you need to be, you need to have status in society and be looked up to and be the leader in the group and have lots of money and wealth and cars and things. And, that's not something that everyone can attain. Most people can't obtain.
But also, I mean, why would any man want to be with anybody who was more impressed by their car than their character? But that's actually me being a bit naive, because some of the richest men in the world essentially have trophy wives, don't they? Yeah. I don't imagine that Melania was drawn to Donald Trump by his sense of humour or his natural compassion or anything like that. I guess, there are women and men who think that trappings and material possessions are more important than anything inside, anything under the bonnet. Thank you, mate. That's very helpful to me. I didn't know that red pilling thing. It's one of those things, you can't be across everything. And it is one of those things I've kind of steered clear of, apart from one chapter in my first book about incels and they're sort of the writers who are their heroes, and this new chap who's popped up on the scene, assuming some sort of, like being a sort of turbocharged aggressive adolescent and turning it into almost a pantomime performance on social media. I'm going to read you quite a long text from Craig. And I'll tell you why I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read it to you because it just absolutely touched me. I think this is beautiful. And it covers a lot of ground as well, but there's a line in it which I just think is really romantic. And I love romance, which means I'm probably not high-value male, because I should love Lamborghinis or something. I was the textbook incel that you talked about, James. I was lonely to the point, and I'm going to mention something now that is obviously, the worst thing you can do to yourself. So just to give you a quick heads up that if that's something that troubles you, I was lonely to the point. Well, you know what I was going to say. I was lonely to the point of contemplating something awful. I believed I would die alone. My issue was that I had absolutely zero self-confidence, and so I projected that lack of confidence. I eventually tried online dating. I met a woman and had 2 very awkward dates as I was trying to be what I thought she would like. And we decided to just be friends instead. We then met up again as friends shortly afterwards, and I was just being me. Afterwards, this is the romantic bit, afterwards she texted back and said, "Do that again." Isn't that lovely? I get that, mate. See, I know I come across as quite cocky and confident, but I completely understand how you can end up tying yourself in knots by trying to project the image that you think that a woman may want to see. We've now been together for 11 years, married for 8. We've just had our first child. It's all about loving yourself before you can expect someone else to do so. Craig, you're top of the class today. Layla's in Camden. Layla, what would you like to say?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to say on this subject. I've actually written an entire book called Block, Delete, Move On, all about dating. And
all right. I think you've come through to the wrong department. I think you're looking for advertising, aren't you?
I'm not. I don't.
Well, just next time, ask for permission before you plug your book, Layla. All right, and then I'll be happy to talk to you. Kumbi's in Redbridge. Kumbi, what would you like to say?
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good.
So, I think first time getting through to you, so kind of excited.
Just don't plug your book without permission, and we'll get on fine.
No, how about the song? I'm kidding. There are no songs. I think there are probably going to be a lot of anecdotes, but that lead into the same thing. So, as I was speaking to a researcher, my story kind of is a little bit similar. From about 2014 to 2015, my mom was significantly ill, and she ended up passing as a result of the stroke that she had had. Thank you. talking about it, I'm still a little bit nervous about it. But so during that time, I spent a lot of time. This would be in my mid-30s. I spent a lot of time, swiping on apps, actually going out on dates, meeting people. But none of those ever went anywhere.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out why. Some of them were one-night stands, or some of them were just dates. Some of them would have a couple of conversations, and then it would die. I would disappear. And I think a lot of it was me disappearing on those women that I was trying to meet.
Yeah.
And then my mom passed, and after that period, I spent a little bit of time reflecting on, everything that had happened and the pressure, the emotions that I went through. And within all of that, I realized that I had put a lot of barriers in my own path that stopped me from really being open and available to meeting people that I thought I had wanted to do, but there was just an internal block. Now, I know this doesn't necessarily relate directly to the anger issues that a lot of young men are facing. And
I introduced anger to the conversation. The
right.
Research speaks more of loneliness. I just presume that they feed off each other, right?
They probably do, because I was extremely lonely during that period, which is why I kept on going on dates. I kept on swiping, because I was like, I recognized that there was something missing from my life, and I would like to fill it by meeting somebody. But every time I met somebody, it just did not work out until I took the time to. I was going through something, obviously, but I was trying to heal, and in that process of healing, I recognized that I was the blocker to my own happiness. So after that period,
did you not think you deserved to be happy? Did you not think you deserved? I mean, I appreciate losing your mum, and your mum being poorly would have absorbed a lot of your emotional energy. But behind that, or beneath that, was it low self-esteem, or was it? What do you think it may have been?
I probably have not analyzed myself deeply to be able to answer that question. So I really, really don't know. But the happy ending, much like the text you just read, is that within a year of going through that trauma, I met a wonderful young woman with whom we now share a lovely, lovely baby girl who's just turned 6 months a couple of days ago.
How lovely. So again, it's a question of you wouldn't have been available until you'd come to terms with, until you liked yourself again, until you knew what was going on inside your head and heart. You wouldn't have been much use to anybody else.
To some degree, exactly, yes. But I think even prior to me going through what I'd gone through with my mom, I had been through a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of really, really bad relationships, which built up barriers within me. So, I think the sequence of events is traumatic relationship, issues with my mom, barriers are built up. I'm not allowing anyone to get close to me. I don't want people to get close to me because I'm scared of that hurt. I'm scared of the pain that could possibly come from opening myself up to somebody.
Yeah.
Period of healing, recognizing that actually pain is, that risk is,
it's a form of the stiff upper lip stuff, not admitting that anything hurts you, and therefore not putting yourself in situations where you may get pain. Now, that's really beautifully explained, Kumbi. Thank you. And it is the difference between being real and being fake. Emma puts it very well. These men are the fodder for the future alt-right armies. Think of the worst dregs of proud incels who subscribe to a version of reality that never existed outside high school rom-coms put out in the 80s. Everyone's either a jock or a nerd, and the toxic misogyny is savage and frightening. I've seen horrors. I didn't realise it was all linked to a lot of people mentioning Jordan Peterson as well. I thought he was just about the lobsters. 12:32 is the time. Amelia Cox is here now with the headlines. It's 25-1. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the question is, getting more complicated by the minute. Men are left lonely as they fail to meet women's high standards, is the theory of the psychologist writing in Psychology Today, the rise of lonely single men. And the problem seems to be that women want men who are emotionally available, good communicators and share similar values, while a certain type of man has been persuaded that what women really want is much shallower attributes. Financial success most obviously, and of course security is something that all humans crave. But, for a start, they're not mutually exclusive. And for seconds, if a woman would rather be alone than be with a financially successful, tall, athletic man who's emotionally unavailable, then you should be able to work out which side of this is more important. I'm slightly frightened by some of the stuff that is popping up now. I worry for the younger generation of boys and men a lot with some of the influences that they're exposed to, some of which have been mentioned today. I know Natasha Devon did a show about this on the weekend. But I'm also conscious of Socrates and Thucydides was the Greek I was trying to think of yesterday. Thucydides, and the fact that you can find in the classics, like literally 2,500 years ago, you can find old men like me talking about how worried they are about the younger generation and how things really seem to be different now. Thucydides and Socrates, there you go. If they can worry about it. So I never quite know. It's always the same things coming round in cycles in just in ever so slightly different ways. Even the internet, that has changed everything. But imagine what it was like when television got invented or radio got invented. I don't know. Anyway, I'm waffling and I've got lots of fascinating callers waiting to talk to me. Sophie's in Birmingham. Sophie, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. Thanks for taking my call. This is a subject that's really, really close to my heart, actually. I've worked in the domestic violence sector for about 15 years, and I think women are just tired of misogynistic behaviour.
Yes.
It's gone on since time began, and I think there seems to be a constant focus on women having to fix the problem.
Yes.
I mean, even just how this research has been framed, it's about women having high standards. Men are upset because they can't live up to women's high standards. But how is expecting someone to treat you well within a relationship, how is that having high standards? That should be basic, in my opinion.
And you encounter this a lot. I mean, it's both scary and I guess inevitable that you'd encounter this in your work because domestic, anger leads to violence, doesn't it? And so the angrier you are, and these are men in relationships who are inflicting violence upon the women that you work with and the women that you help. What's changed in recent years, Sophie, do you think?
I think there's a lot more awareness now than there used to be. I think, I think both men and women are becoming aware of how we're socialised. There's so much going on around us that kind of, tries to tell us what our role in society should be and how we should behave. And
more than when we were younger. More it's changes.
I just think we're more aware of it now, James. Yeah. Really, and I think we're all starting to question it. Like for example, after the Sarah Everard situation,
yes.
Women were told to flag down a bus if they felt unsafe. And that was the message from the police. Who are whose job it is to protect people, and I think there's just this constant, don't wear a short skirt, don't drink too much, don't take that route home.
I'm just not having it anymore.
We're told this constantly. Myself and all my friends. If you're walking home by yourself, carry your keys between your fingers just in case something happens, and all of this stuff. And it's like, and I think there's just a realisation starting now that we're tired of it, and it's not working. If it worked, then I wouldn't be in a job, basically.
Oh, that's a really good point. You mean by trying to be what men think they want?
Well, trying to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
Women can't fix the problem. It's got to be a joint effort. It's got to be the whole of society.
What's the attraction for the man then, do you think? So here's an example. David Taylor's been in touch to say LBC doing a fantastic job at man bashing. So that's probably the kind of person we're talking about. How does someone like that hear this conversation as a personal attack on him?
I think...
I don't know. You may not know either. You don't have to...
I don't know, James, either. It's a really tricky one. I mean, and all the way, basically, I've never come across... I've worked with many, many women throughout my career, and I've never met one where a perpetrator has taken responsibility for their behaviour and acknowledged that it's wrong.
There it is.
So
it's always her fault.
And that's not to say that it doesn't happen or it wouldn't happen, but that's my experience.
I hear you.
With regards to why they do it, enjoying being in control and having power, over someone else. I guess that happens.
That's not love, though.
None
of these men seem very happy. I'm not an expert on it, but none of the men who are being held up on as heroes, whether they're writing books or whether they're making internet films, they don't seem very happy. They never seem sort of comfortable in their own skin or warm or compassionate. 12:41 is the time. A couple of people have pointed out that caller earlier may not have known about my rule, where you're not allowed to plug your own books on this programme until you're invited to do so, which I think on reflection might be fair criticism. I'll see whether or not she wants to have another go. Well, I'll try to, because there's a very busy switchboard at the moment. Jack's in Bromley. Jack, I feel a bit... I don't think I've ever felt older, mate. I feel like this is happening right under my nose, and it's almost... This must be how Socrates felt in 400 BC when he was worrying about the young people. What's going on?
Well, I don't know what Socrates would make of the dating apps, but that was something I wanted to just hinge my kind of point on, first of all, is that I can definitely understand with these dating apps how it feeds into this sort of cottage industry of these guys that want to tell men that, women hate them, blah, 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 get them down that kind of pipeline.
Because there's so much rejection, isn't there? Soft and hard rejection. There's so much of it, I presume, with dating apps, because you're out there saying, hello, love me, and every day there's lots of people saying no thanks.
Yeah, and I can see how that gets turned into, these women are too picky, they hate you, etc. But it's just, that is a complete smokescreen, because the reality is, and I can fully understand it. I know guys like this. I've sort of had kind of I've had feelings like this in the past myself as well, where, if you don't have, and I know there's a certain kind of guy, maybe he's not been in kind of many relationships before, etc. He doesn't have like a circle of friends, especially guys as well. They don't like take photos of each other, for like their dating profiles. It's, so it's a thing where if you haven't had a girlfriend who's like been taking photos of you, you might not have that many good photos to put and have a nice sort of good looking, profile. And so what you have is you have men who are like very desperate to get matches, and so they're swiping on everybody, being really unfussy, because it's like, why would they be fussy? None of these people match with me, so I'm just going to keep swiping. Right. And then on the flip side, it's completely understandable then that the girls and the women on the other side of it, they're expecting that they're going to get quite a few matches. So then they're sort of wary, I don't want to match with everybody, so I'm going to be a bit more selective.
So we're down to, I want to choose my words carefully, but men are looking to get laid. Right?
I mean...
in the first instance. And women, and that's why they will swipe everything, and women are looking for a little bit more than that, which is why they're more choosy, and then the more desperate the man is to achieve his goal.
Slightly more to it.
Okay.
I think there's slightly more to it. I think that may be an element, but I think ultimately it's this vicious cycle where you've got men swiping on everybody, women then therefore being more selective, and then that just feeds into a vicious cycle. And then of course what happens as well then is when guys who are getting very few matches, they obviously then feel kind of dejected about that, but when they do get a match, they're very overly invested in it, and it suddenly becomes, oh my God, and they're suddenly planning out their whole future together.
All right.
Whereas that's not a healthy way.
Are you in a relationship? Are you in a relationship?
Not at the moment, no.
But you're not lonely?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, not to sort of.
So I didn't mean to pry. I mean, there's a difference between being comfortable where you are, and I guess partly to do with the longer it goes on. 12:45 is the time. I think we'll invite that author back on to the programme. Quite a few people pointing out that you may not know about my rule that you're not allowed to plug your own book. And one or two people pointing out that I have very occasionally plugged my own. So I think, to be fair, we should give her another crack of the whip. 12:45 is the time. 12:48 is the time. And, there are a lot of lonely people out there. And not all of them are lonely because they're bitter. Some of them are lonely because they're really shy. Here it is. This is the quote, apparently, from one of the books we mentioned. The idea that women were oppressed throughout history is an appalling theory. Okay. That's from Julian Suffolk, and that I think is a Jordan Peterson quote. So there's part of the problem. 12:48 is the time. I'm going to invite Layla in Camden back onto the programme after sending her away with a flea in her ear for plugging her book before I'd barely drawn breath. Layla, my apologies. I didn't realise that you'd mentioned your book to the researcher, so you were perfectly within your rights to mention it at the top of the show. What is a dating expert?
Well, I mean, I'm a social worker by trade, so obviously my bread and butter is understanding relationships between people and how to improve them and how to make them better. So there is a combination of my work with people, but also I'm a bit of an expert because I've done a lot of it and made a mistake, several thousand mistakes. So I put the combination of the two bits of knowledge together, and I'm a dating expert. I used to work for the NHS as well, teaching safe sex and relationships in schools, and now I use my Instagram to teach women, mainly heterosexual women, that they don't have to settle for the sewage that is the current dating pool.
Now, that's man-bashing, according to some of my correspondence today. But, of course, that's an absence of self-scrutiny, isn't it? You describe behaviours and then use a word like sewage to describe those behaviours, I think fairly. But if you behave like that, you're going to claim that you've been attacked.
But who are the people that are claiming it's man-bashing? Have any of them actually had to date men?
You know that, don't you? And I know that as well. And I mean, that's the darkness of this whole topic, isn't it? The thing.
I mean, the stuff that you've been talking about, the high-value stuff, the Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, that is a huge element of it. Specifically, the PUAs, the pickup artists, who have millions and millions of views on YouTube. So there's two different kind of dating sectors. You have the dating sector that...
I'm just going to double down. I'm going to completely double down on my apology, Layla, for sending you away with a flea in your ear, because you're clearly absolutely brilliant at this sort of stuff. So with your permission, I'll just sit back for 5 minutes and let you take over, all right?
Oh, no, I want to have a back and forth conversation. But so the two dating...
But I want to learn from you. I want to learn from you is all I'm saying. I'm not going to challenge anything you say.
Well, thank you. There's my kind of side, which is appealing to heterosexual women, which is now saying, you know what, we're not like our grandmothers and our mothers. We don't need men. We can have mortgages without them now. We can vote without them. You know, there was obviously a long time in history that we absolutely needed men, and those men didn't need to have any skills. They didn't need to nurture relationships because we weren't going anywhere because we couldn't.
It's a transaction. It's a transaction, not in a cynical or an unpleasant way, but it was simply, I will put up with this because if I don't get that.
Literally. Well, we couldn't survive. We couldn't just leave them if they were awful. We couldn't go off into the world with our 5 children and no job. You know, there was no choice. And of course, feminism, liberation, progression, the world has changed, and women no longer need men, and therefore we have to want them. And unfortunately, some men, I mean, there are some men that are obviously fantastic and brilliant, but there is a large subsection of men who are being misguided wholly by the dating sector for men, which is a lot of pickup artist type psychology. I don't know if you know about the book The Game.
That's a while ago. That's about the last time. That was negging and stuff like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's still very much. I mean, if you just put in PUA, pickup artist, or even dating tips for men, into YouTube or anywhere really, the information that you're going to get is don't make a beautiful woman feel too beautiful. Every other man is making her feel beautiful, so you're the one who's got to knock her confidence. That way she's going to be chasing your approval and chasing your validation. So we've got men out here who are being taught to be mean to us.
Right. How bleak.
Yeah, and unfortunately some of it works.
Well, I was about to say there must be an occasion, or it's like a fixed odds betting terminal, isn't it? It might be bankrupting you, but every now and then that you'll get a successful result.
Yeah, exactly. So we're being taught two different things, and what women are being taught is good. It's go and get therapy, work on yourselves, which a lot of us are doing.
Yes.
Raise your standards, look for emotional connection. And we're out here looking for that, but unfortunately men are still not being able to feel confident to work on their mental health. That's still being seen as a kind of feminine thing to go and get therapy.
Which is heartbreaking as well.
I'm not judging men.
No, I hear you. You're not. So in fact, there's a slightly sort of clumsy conclusions I was hedging towards. It is linked to the fact that women are preferring, or they will choose not to be in a relationship, even if they'd rather be in a relationship, than to be in a relationship with somebody in the sort of categories that we're describing.
we understand now that being single is okay, and it's far preferable to being in a horrible relationship, which can feel utterly lonely.
Who do you direct your help to, men or women or both? Because as a dating expert, a lot of what you've said is anti-dating. You essentially, from a woman's point of view, you're discouraging.
No, I'm not discouraging it. What I'm saying is, if you're going to go out and date and this is to everyone, go out and date when you're in a secure place, when you're not absolutely desperate for a relationship.
When you love yourself.
When you know yourself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And don't go out into the dating scene feeling insecure and desperate and lonely, because you're going to not attract the most healthy relationship. But everyone can benefit from my advice. But of course, what I know is dating men, and so I speak from that perspective. Did you have
a road to Damascus moment? Was there a moment where you thought, I'm not putting up with this anymore, or was it a sort of incremental process?
No, I did. I had it was the F-boy that broke the camel's back, after a long string of me making ridiculous mistakes on dating apps, not vetting people properly, jumping in with my heart first.
Yes.
Not being sensible, taking people at face value, and just being desperate to be wanted by a man and to be loved by a man. And so, I wasn't picking up that people were actually just wanting to sleep with me, or, that I was just one of many women. And it was when I sort of noticed that actually it wasn't just me that this was happening to, that there was a lot of women on the dating scene coming away just feeling like this was a brutal experience. And again, I know men are feeling that too.
Yes, I know. You don't have to keep saying, I'm not telling you what you do and don't have to do, but there are men going, well, what about me? What about me? It's not exclusive, but we're talking about your life now, so that's why we're not talking about you. You know what you should do, don't you? You should write a book.
I've already written a Sunday Times best-selling book called Block, Delete, Move On, all about this subject. You should read it, James. I'll send you a copy.
I am such a prat sometimes. But it's just a pet thing for me. It's as if, if you just hadn't said it in the first sentence, then I wouldn't. I'm sorry.
I wanted to qualify my.
I know you did. I know. That's why I'm doing it. Well, I'll tell you what. The first line of my last book is if there's no point having a mind if you never change it. So I'm glad I've learned the importance of admitting when I've made a mistake. How else can people find out more about the work that you're doing, Layla? Is it? I'm on
Instagram, let me explain, and I write a weekly column for OK Magazine, giving advice on dating.
Kicking you into touch with me. Oh dear. Yeah, well done. All right, thank you, Keith. That's enough of that. I'll give you the book, mate.
I'm going to get a copy sent to the studio just for you. You can read it to your daughters, and it will change their lives.
Well, I'll take you up on that. I really will, because it sounds as if you have both evidence and experience to support these things. Before you go, I don't have boys. I've got godsons. How worried should I be about the sort of influences that you're describing?
We need to be really quite worried about the growing misogyny online. All parents need to be aware of it. I would really recommend for all parents to read Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates, which is a really incredible deep dive into how incel culture and misogyny is spreading across social media. If you have children, if you work with children, you need to be able to talk to them about these things, because they will come across them. Avoiding it is not possible. We have to be able to counteract with education to show them that this stuff is radicalisation and it's extremism and it's harmful.
And I thank you for sounding the alarm. I really do. And I will I'll tweet a link to your book now as well. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you.
And thank you for being gentle with me after I behaved like a bit of an idiot at the beginning of our encounter. It's coming up to 12:58 is the time. Block, delete, move on. There it is by, I'm going to say it wrong now probably, Layla, let me explain. And that's the problem, is that I hate giving attention to these men. I always have. It's why we don't talk about Jordan Peterson on the programme, although I mentioned him a bit briefly in my first book. It's a really difficult situation to pursue, which is why actually people like Layla are so important. And this book by Laura Bates as well, Men Who Hate Women, is absolutely crucial, because you've got a younger generation coming up now who think this kind of behaviour is normal. And it is a bit like fixed odds betting terminals. They think women are machines that you put a coin in return for sex. And they try putting millions of coins And on the rare occasions that it works, they think that it somehow vindicates this weaponized misogyny that many young people are falling for. I'm going to have to talk about this again. And I don't particularly want to, which is why I'm so lucky to have people like Layla listening who can step up to the plate and help me out, even if I didn't immediately appreciate how lucky I was. That's it from me for another day. Should we do it all again? Tomorrow from 10, I'm game if you are. Yeah? You sure? All right, I'll see you there. Here's Sheila. 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 All right, I'll